Okay, in this tutorial I'm going to go through the parts of the ear. So let's get straight into it. The outer part of the ear, this part here, the bit that you would normally see in what you would call the ear, is the pinna. However, there's a lot more to the ear. There's the bits on the inside, but the bit on the outside that we often refer to as the ear is the pinna. The next bit that kind of connects to the ear is the auditory canal. So this is essentially a tube that runs into our head slightly. It's not necessarily quite as straight as this. It's probably got a bit more of a twist and turn to it as well. But the auditory canal kind of goes into the ear, and this is the thing we often shove cotton buds into to try and get rid of some of the wax that can build up in there. So the pinna and the auditory canal, these are all parts essentially of what we call the outer ear. So they kind of connect or are exposed to the outside. Next we've got some parts, we've got the bit here called the eardrum. Now the eardrum also is sometimes called the tympanic membrane. Tympanic membrane. And I think the tympani is like a type of drum. So kind of the same name really. Now it's a thin membrane, just like on a drum has a membrane on the top, and it kind of acts like a drum, but instead of someone banging on the drum, it's sound waves that come in the air. They make the surface vibrate. So it's kind of a little bit like the opposite of a drum really. Normally we bang on a drum and the vibrations cause the sound, whereas here it's the other way around. The sound comes in and hits the drum, the surface, this membrane, and causes it to vibrate. So this is what we call the eardrum. The eardrum is connected to a series of three little bones here: the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. And essentially the vibrating of the eardrum, it's connected to the hammer, causes this hammer to bang on the anvil, which is connected to the stirrup, which essentially passes on the vibrations to this blue part here. So these three tiny little bones essentially transfer the vibrations of the eardrum to the part that actually senses sound, the blue part here, the cochlea. So the hammer, anvil, and stirrup are three tiny little bones. The hammer is attached to the eardrum, and it bangs on the anvil, which passes the vibrations onto the stirrup. These three are the smallest bones in the body, and one of them is only a few millimeters long, so very, very tiny bones. The part that actually picks up the sound here is the cochlea, and it's a snail or spiral-shaped kind of structure, and again it's not actually that big, and inside that kind of spiral-shaped structure it's filled with fluid, and there are tiny cells in there with tiny like hair-like structures, and the vibration through the fluid causes those hairs to move, and it's the movement of those hairs that triggers those cells to send an electrical impulse to the brain. So again, this is another sensory organ. It senses, in this case it's the sound waves, those vibrations, and that causes fluid in here to move slightly, and causes slight little projections on the cells to vibrate, and causes them to trigger an electrical impulse that goes out the auditory nerve here. So again, a nerve is just a bundle of neurons, so these would all be a bundle of lots of axons lying side by side, covered in their myelin sheaths. So a nerve is a bundle of axons, those neurons, which carry the electrical signal up to the brain. But the middle, this blue part, which is called the inner ear, the cochlea, it also has these loops, these semicircular canals. So semicircular, like which just means half circle canals. There are these loops, and they go in different directions in the three different planes. So one kind of lies horizontal, and one lies vertical, and one kind of sits again sort of vertical, but facing the other way. So one maybe comes forward towards the front of us, and the other one goes kind of left and right. So in the three planes. And essentially whenever we move, these tubes are filled with fluid. So when we move, if we turn our head quickly, it causes fluid in the horizontal one to move through the tube. So you imagine like a hula hoop or something like that full of water. If we turn it, the water inside kind of stays where it is, So that means the fluid essentially moves relative to, it's not actually the fluid that's moving so much, that probably stays where it is, but the loop kind of moves around the fluid, so they move relative to each other. So whenever we move, there's a relative movement of the fluid in these semicircular canals. The fluid inside them, because it kind of stays in its place, moves relative to the actual tube. So whenever we move our head left, right, up, down, when we nod, any of those kind of movements causes fluid to move through a particular one of these semicircular canals. So I guess those are the three movements: moving our head left, right, kind of rotating our head, like if we're saying no, or nodding up, down. Those are kind of the three planes. We're going to cause fluid to move, in each case, through one of these tubes. And again, inside these tubes, we've got tiny little cells with little hair-like structures, and the movement of that fluid causes those hairs to move, those tiny little projections, they're called cilia, on the surface of the cells to move, and they stimulate those cells, and again, they send electrical impulses to the brain. So what's the point of those? Well, these ones actually aren't involved in picking up sound, but they're to do with movement. They're actually what give us our sense of balance and almost our sense of direction, like which way is up, and in which position is our body. So they help us to position our body, and they help us to sense movement and to essentially balance, to keep ourselves balanced. If you've been swirling around in a car or on a theme park ride, the fluid inside has been swirling around so much that essentially it kind of gets a little bit overstimulated, and it gets hard to, it gets harder to figure out. The fluid might still be moving a bit, and it's hard to figure out kind of which way is up and down. And the other thing is, we don't just actually judge our position purely based on this. We use our eyes and other senses too. And so sometimes on those rides, what's happening is the signal that's coming from these loops, we get one signal that comes from these loops that says, hey, we're moving this way, and we're getting pushed down this way, but our eyes give us a different signal. And it's basically because we're being whirled round, and when we get kind of conflicting signals, that can make us feel a bit nauseous. So these semicircular canals are really important for our sense of balance and sense of position, kind of which way our body is orientated. So these blue parts here make up what's called the inner ear, the semicircular canals and the cochlea. Like I said, the auditory nerve, just a bundle of neurons that carry the signals from the cochlea to the brain. One last structure that we need to look at is called the Eustachian Tube. I hope I'm saying that right. This is just a tube that connects the cavity here inside the ear to our sinuses, or our nasal cavity, and that is actually an important role, because if this was completely sealed off inside here, now there needs to be a space here, because this is acting like a drum, like a membrane on a drum, the eardrum. So it needs to be that membrane needs to be able to move and vibrate. So this can't just be kind of completely solid. We need kind of a space behind it so that this eardrum can vibrate. But when sometimes there's a change in pressure around us, outside of us, now you will have experienced that if you're on a plane, when you go higher, the pressure changes, or when you're driving over the mountains in a car, the pressure can change. And that's often when your ears pop. We often say our ears pop. What's actually happening there is pressure builds up outside, or the pressure decreases outside, which means there's a difference in the pressure behind the eardrum here and on the outside, and that puts a little bit of pressure on the eardrum itself, and you wouldn't want it to burst. When someone's eardrum bursts, it's very painful. So one thing that happens is we regularly equalize the pressure. We try to make the pressure inside the ear the same as what's on the outside, and that's done through the sinuses. So through this tube here allows us to equalize, make sure the pressure on this side and the outside is the same. So when your ears pop, what you're actually doing is you're equalizing the pressure to make the pressure the same. And just before you pop your ears, you often feel a bit of pressure inside on your eardrum, kind of that's built up. So that's what the Eustachian tube does. Alright, I think that's basically it. We'll just quickly run through here the outer ear, so that was the pinna, and the auditory canal. Some books include the tympanic membrane as the outer ear. It's probably lots of other books include it as the middle ear. So if we look here, the middle ear is the series of these 3 small bones. So I think we can count the tympanic membrane as the outer ear. These 3 tiny bones are essentially the middle ear. So here we've got the hammer, which is attached to the tympanic membrane, the eardrum, and as that vibrates, it will bang on here the anvil. Alright, and the anvil is connected to this one, the stirrup. And why is it called the stirrup? Well, let's look at it. It looks like the stirrups, kind of the things you put your shoes into when you're riding a horse. And this is connected to the cochlea. So as the hammer bangs on the anvil, the vibrations are transferred through to the cochlea. The inner ear, here you've got a model of the inner ear. This is the cochlea here. It's been cut in half, cut open, and you can see these tubes kind of inside it which are full of fluid and full of those tiny cells that pick up the vibrations. And here the semicircular canals, which again are filled through fluid, and when we turn our head, up, down, left, right, side to side, fluid's going to move through these tubes and stimulate the little hairs, the little cilia on the cells inside them, and again they send electrical signals about our position, that tell our brain what position we're in or which way we're moving, and so that gives us our sense of balance. So the ear is also definitely involved in our sense of balance. So those are the structures of the ear. I think most of you will have this diagram. So those are the ones you need to know. And again, for this upcoming test, guys, attention to detail. So try to learn all the structures you've got there. Cool. I hope you found that helpful.